and how all of this works. So we are Montana's State Humanities Council. We were established in 1972, and we're one of 56 councils across the nation that are the National Endowment for the Humanities created in order for us to better infuse the humanities directly and effectively into public life. For the last 50 years, we've helped strengthen communities through grants and special programs that reach into really every corner of the state. We produce, fund, create, and support humanities-based projects and programs and help with some eye-opening cultural experiences and meaningful conversations. Our goal is to connect people, inspire ideas, and deepen mutual understanding. We do want to acknowledge that Humanities Montana is in the homelands of Indigenous people. We recognize that our offices and daily operations are housed on the Aboriginal territories of the Salish, Kootenai, and Kalispel people, and that the work of our state grant making and programming are carried out across Indigenous communities on whose land we reside and is now known as Montana. So we just want to offer our respect for their history and their culture, and for the path they have always shown us in caring for this place for generations to come. And our mission is to serve communities through stories and conversation. We offer experiences that nurture imagination and ideas by speaking to Montana's diverse history, literature, and philosophy. And to do this, we provide programs that tell stories, we facilitate conversations about the most pressing issues in our culture. And we want to support cultural institutions through grants and partnerships, and we offer humanities such as history, literature, philosophy to nurture imagination and ideas. We are also very dedicated to inclusion, diversity, equity, and access for all people. And this is our commitment statement. So we embracing the intrinsic value and full humanity of all persons. Humanities Montana provides programs and experiences that nurture imagination and ideas through the diverse histories, literatures, cultures, and philosophies reflective of Montana's diverse communities. While attending to racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, ableism, and other systemic inequities, we make a particular commitment to Montana's Indigenous peoples, rural communities, and youth. And we are committed to providing and developing programs and grants for partners using this IDEA lens, or what we call IDEA, to support diverse representation among program leaders, project organizers, scholars, keynote speakers, conversation leaders, and panelists across all of our sponsored events and offerings. A few more people are joining. Okay. For those of you who have just popped into the meeting, please go ahead, let us know who you are and where you're from in the chat. So our grant making, Humanities Montana, as one of the state councils, we act as a pass-through entity for funds that are awarded to us by the National Endowment for the Humanities. So annually, we apply for funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities. They give us funding, and we give you funding. So we act as that pass-through entity. And we can provide subawards to organizations or groups that apply for funding to carry out a project that's constituted for nonprofit purposes. Eligible entities would include private nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher education, state, local, and federally recognized Indian tribal governments, institutions of the federal government, groups of persons that form an association to carry out a project, and individuals But we reserve the granting to individuals to our research fellowships only. And although it's not necessary that any of these entities have or be incorporated and have a tax exempt status, we do require, the federal government requires that all subrecipients must be formally registered with the federal government via sam.gov. And they need to be able to provide a unique entity ID to be considered eligible. And if you don't know what the unique entity ID is, if you have received federal funds in the past for anything, they used to require a DUNS. That was this like identification that you've registered with the federal government. In April 2022, they made the DUNS obsolete and have now moved over to this unique entity ID or UEI. If you have questions about that, please reach out to me. It is a bit of a hitch and everybody's giddy up right now. So make sure to reach out if you have questions. Overall, we cannot provide subawards to for-profit entities. It's pretty straightforward. Right, okay. So getting into the nuts and bolts of our grant making, as a recipient of NEH funding, historically, our annual subawarding budget is somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. That's what we have to give to everyone over the course of a fiscal year. That's the whole kit and caboodle. Hopefully that just gives you an idea of maybe how small we are. But we still have the capacity to support the project. So we have 3 granting cycles or deadlines and 1 ongoing open application opportunity. So we have our fiscal year runs from November 1st to October 31st. So today is the beginning of fiscal year 23 for us here at Humanities Montana. And we accept applications for opportunity grants on a rolling basis based on fund availability. We'll go into that in a second. And December 20th, we accept applications for our research fellowships, our regular grants. April 20th, we accept applications for regular grants, and August 20th, we accept applications for both our film and video, and again, regular grants. So all applications are part of a competitive evaluation and will be considered on the quality of the application submitted, its relevance to the humanities, and the potential outreach and value to all Montana citizens. So I'll just take a quick beat there to say one of the key pieces to any successful application is being able to demonstrate the involvement and impact of Montanans. Where are you going to go? How is this going to impact Montana? As the State Humanities Council, that's our focus. And priority for subawards may be given to requests from entities that are considered marginalized due to community size, economics, or ethnic and cultural diversity. Lastly, all grants are reviewed by staff, the grants committee, and our full board of directors who then make final awarding decisions. So I'm going to stop there. If you have any burning questions that you absolutely need answered today, if you could put those questions in the chat, and I will make sure to check in and make sure that we're covering everything. All right, the fun stuff. So before we go any further, let's talk a little bit about how we define humanities. What we mean by public humanities and who qualifies as a humanities scholars. These are really the 3 most important pieces to our grant making process. So I want to make sure we're all really well versed in these 3 things. So for many, the humanities is a discipline maybe isolated to academics or specifically history, philosophy, literature, religion, etc. Right? And maybe this, when we say humanities, it reminds you of like a marble bust, like our friends, Archimedes here, circa 287, 212 BC. And although all of these things are included in the definition, the humanities, circa 2022, encompass much, much more. So when we work to define the humanities, we like to say that it is the examination of what it means to be human. And this examination involves the interpretation and discussion of all forms of thought, interest, and expression. And we value the traditional humanities disciplines, such as literature, history, and philosophy. But our emphasis as a Humanities Council is on public humanities. So that means we're looking at the humanities as more than just an academic discipline. And it's that process. Humanities is a process of understanding, and we want to learn how to think creatively, to think critically, to reason, and to ask questions to, again, deepen our understanding of the human experience. So above all else, state humanities councils were formed to create a bridge between humanities in the academic sense and community grassroots initiatives. Essentially, we're applying things like critical thinking, informed reasoning, logic, historical learning and analysis, and creativity to modern, current, pressing issues and institutions of our world today. We're looking to Montanans to help us steward the humanities by developing projects that do a couple things. So we want your projects to respond to current conversations about the conditions of civic life and cultural life in real time, things that are happening now. We want you to further community-driven ideas and efforts to address issues of social, cultural, and intellectual importance. We want to see projects that are based on collaboration between humanities, non-humanities entities, or community organizations to reach larger and more diverse public audiences in Montana. And when we think about applying the humanities, we're most interested in projects that result in some type of skill acquisition. Right? So we mentioned some of those a few moments ago, but this examples of like critical thinking and creative problem solving. The ability to translate humanities intellectual output into a broader community outside of academia. Another skill would be this increased understanding of the value and applicability of the humanities, maybe an increased understanding of ethical implications of a scenario. Maybe your audience gains clear and persuasive writing or oral presentation skills. Maybe they get a greater awareness and understanding of current events. Or one of our favorites is this increased global awareness and sensitivity to other cultures. With this, I hope everyone's had their eureka moments. And I'm going to be a geek now and say that, hope you're having a moment like our friend Archimedes, that you can run through the streets, preferably while clothed. If you have a question about that, let me know. But I want you to run through the street shouting, I get it. I can apply the humanities to almost everything. So the third most important piece to our grant making is humanities scholarship. So we get a lot of questions about this, but a humanities scholar or advisor is an individual with significant knowledge and experience in a discipline relevant to your project's humanities content. So examples of humanities scholars may include an academic scholar, and this would be someone or an individual with an advanced degree in the humanities, who will provide direct support to the development and implementation of your project or program. An example might be a university or college professor, a research fellow, someone with a PhD. A subject area expert is also considered a scholar for us, and that's an individual who's been established as a subject expert in an area specific to your project's humanities content. And they may have acquired this expertise through work experience, teaching, publication, or through recognition by others in the same field. An example might be a business or nonprofit executive, a consultant, a certified professional, a published author, etc. A community expert would be an individual with special knowledge of cultural traditions or local history, or someone who has specialized skills or knowledge of the project's target audience. Examples might be a tribal elder, a local historian, a local artisan, much more. And we do require for each project that you include at least one humanities scholar. And we want them to not just be listed, but we also want evidence that they're involved in the project, whether that's they're providing research, they're presenting, they're collaborating to check facts, whatever that might be. We want to know that there's some scholarship backing your project, the information you're sharing with the public. And we really strongly encourage you to include maybe a letter of support from your named humanities scholar in your application. And it's very important. We've had projects where people propose humanities scholars, and then we reach out to those scholars and they have no knowledge of your project. And that's not great. So we want to make sure that you've got someone that's confirmed and is committed to assisting with your project. Nothing in the chat yet. Okay. Today we're just going to focus our attention on the grants that are related to our December 20th deadline, and just provide a quick overview of our opportunity grants since those are ongoing. All of our grant opportunities support projects that promote public humanities programming and must absolutely be rooted in the humanities, involve humanities scholarship, engage the general public, or offer a public program, need to be free or at the very least not cost prohibitive, and they need to be nonpartisan. So our opportunity grants offer support of up to $1,000 for projects in need of more immediate support. And opportunity grant applications and reporting may involve, they're a little less rigorous than the others. And these applications can be submitted at any time, but we do prefer that you submit applications at least 4 weeks prior to whatever it is you need support for. And we only award opportunity grants to organizations, not individuals. An example of an opportunity grant would be support for speaker honoraria or facility rental or outreach for your specific project. And I'll give you an example of one of our recent opportunity grants. This was for, it was called Boarding Schools, Remembering Resiliency and Shared Knowledge. This past September, it was the National Day of Remembrance for Indian Boarding Schools. The University of Montana, the Phyllis J. Washington College of Education, and the Native Children's Trauma Center sponsored a symposium for Montana educators. The symposium provided all educators of the elementary, secondary, and post secondary levels with knowledge, guidance, and practices related to integrating trauma-informed learning into their classrooms. The event also provided content and specific teaching methods designed to address and emphasize curricular integration of topics such as Indian boarding schools and other meaningful applications of the Indian education for all. They received funding within that $1,000 range specifically to support honoraria for travel and time for one of their speakers. Our regular grants are support in excess of $1,000, and these require more significant planning and implementation and evaluation efforts. So applications for regular grants can be submitted during each granting cycle and are tied to the following annual submission deadline. So we are open for regular grants on the deadline would be December 20th, April 20th, August 20th. And again, we only award regular grants to organizations, not individuals. An example of this might be like a speaker series, panel, lectures, presentations, cultural festivals, oral histories, multimedia projects. This excludes film and video, the different categories, literacy projects, etc. An example, recently we supported the James Welch Native American Literature Festival. And that was a 3-day event celebrating the work of the internationally acclaimed James Welch and featured many contemporary Native American writers. The last grant we'll talk about today is the Research Fellowship. This is support of up to $1,000 to a broad range of scholars. So not all affiliated with the university. So there's a piece to that. So this is for research in the humanities relating to Montana and the region. It's typically, we award 3 fellowships annually to help research devote several weeks of reflection, research, writing, and all research projects must result in a public program. That will be open and presented to Montana audiences. So, and we also need to receive a copy of the end product, whatever it is you pitch to us, we'll need to see at the end. I think the key to these research fellowships is that you don't have to be tied to a university. In fact, we want to see researchers who are not in a degree program or not working towards a certification. If you are in the process, we want proof that you've completed all of your requirements and that this is something else. And that's confusing, just let me know. Some examples of research fellowships, we've seen things about exhibits, narrated computer, or web-based products. We've seen products, series of newspaper, magazine articles, books, journals, things like that. A good example is in 2021, we helped fund a fellow who was doing some ongoing research in the current state of knowledge of Salish astronomy. Very fascinating. And in terms of eligibility for research fellowships, there's a couple things to keep in mind. We will give a preference to Montana residents, where persons seeking support for work leading toward a degree are not eligible, as I mentioned. And although not a requirement, some applicants may wish to conduct research under the guidance of a mentor, in which case the application must include a written mentoring plan. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions about those 3 grant types? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about creating a successful application. sure you've heard this before, but we're going to go back through it. So we want to make sure that your application organization information is correct. So in our online application system, you have to have an account, you have to be tied to an organization, and all of that is part of our vetting process. So make sure that when you get into our system that you've got the right organization, name, and the correct address. And the name and address that are correct are the ones that will match the tax ID or EIN on your organization's Form W-9, right? You can't put your own name in as an organization. It's just not, you can't do that. So you're the applicant, your contact information is tied to it. Let's make sure you've got the correct organization associated with your project. And even though our online application requires you to write a narrative in a text field, we're still going to ask that you use available features to format and organize your proposal. This means that making sure you're including indentation, punctuation, bullets and numbering, making sure to separate paragraphs. And you may also include reference links to complement your narrative where it makes sense to keep things brief. And if you need more information, you can click on the link and you can go learn about it there. But we don't need to put everything in there, but those reference links are always very helpful. And successful applications include strong narratives, and strong narratives include well-developed and concise descriptions that clearly explain how the funds will be used. We want to make sure that your application is, we want to know about your organization's mission. We want you to explain the humanities focus of your project, clearly describe your project goal, your measurable outcomes and outputs, timeline and activities, as well as your inputs such as personnel and resources. And for each outcome, we really want to know about your evaluation and sort of data collection plan, or something that's going to help us assess and you assess the success of your project. And this application, it does include different text areas for each of these topics. So be sure to break these out accordingly, rather than just like lumping it all into one giant essay type format. So it makes it a lot easier for us to review. The faster we can review, the faster we can award funds. So the humanities content, like I mentioned, that's our biggest target for you. That's what we want you to do. So when you're thinking about your narrative, when you're thinking about addressing this humanities content piece, this is what we want to know. We want, when we read your application, we want to know what need you're addressing. We want to know who's benefiting from this project. We want to know exactly how you're going to spend the funds. We want to know how you're incorporating that public aspect of humanities. We want to know your main activities, and after you do those activities, what is your outcome? We want to know how your project is informed by scholarship, how you're going to promote your project to increase reach and impact, and we want to know what you're going to do to increase sustainability of this project after the grant term ends. And I am going to just reiterate here for anyone who's seeking repeat funding for the same project, right? If you're coming in as an organization and you have a totally new project, you've never been funded, or you may have been funded before, but not for the same thing, pitch us your idea, right? But if you're an organization returning for funding for the same project, we're going to need to see a couple things, like how is your project different than the last time? You know, what's innovative about this next iteration? What type of sustainable funding support have you garnered since the last time you received funding? We need you to reduce the amount you're requesting year over year to demonstrate sustainability. and we really want to see additional collaboration. So obviously, you know what our annual budget is. So we want to continue to support repeat proposals. We know that the humanities in Montana is there are limited resources for your cultural institutions. So we want to make sure that we continue to support you. We also want to see you create sustainability within your projects and programs. So if you are a repeat, you're coming in for a repeat proposal, please make sure to contact me and we can talk through that. Unsuccessful narratives. The key to success for your narrative is balance. Try not to over-explain by providing lengthy detail about specific topics your project is going to address. For example, like don't send us a 10,000 word description of like the history of feminism in the United States, when all you're asking for are funds to support speaker travel expenses to come to a panel that has conversation about feminism in Montana, right? Like we get it, but we just kind of want to know more of the specifics. If we need more help with the context, we will reach out after your application. So just kind of tell us why this topic is important to Montanans right now and what you think the result of your project will be. Also, try not to oversimplify with the other side, right? By providing only the bare minimum. Tell us what you need, why you need it, what you're going to do with your funds, and the intended immediate and long-term impacts of your public humanities program. Okay, everybody's favorite topic when it comes to requesting funds, budgets. So allowable expenses, let's get right into it. So allowable expenses are those expenses that are directly accountable to your proposed project. Like the easiest way to describe it. And without these funds, you won't be able to fulfill your project outcomes. So we do provide, we do allow funds to go towards project staff salaries. We typically don't want to see this be much over about 10% of your overall award, but we understand that you're small organizations. You might be the only staff in your organization, and we understand the importance of providing support to salaries. So go for it. And we'll connect with you if it seems unreasonable. Project contractors, consultants, scholars, we can definitely support that. Project related travel or per diem, such as like lodging, meals, mileage for project staff or any of your personnel, consultants, scholars, you can include that. Do know that if you submit requests for funds for travel or per diem, that you will need to submit those receipts. For project activities that directly support project design, development, implementation, and evaluation efforts. So this might include expenses for printing, posters, programs, advertising through social or news outlets, so newspaper, television, radio, social media, paid ads or booths or rental of facilities and equipment. You'll notice in the unallowable, you cannot ask for funds to buy facilities or equipment, any sort of those like capital purchases, right? Things you're going to hang on to that may have a depreciating, they might be a depreciating asset. And yes, we can also cover some fiscal sponsorship pass-through funds if you do need to acquire fiscal sponsorship, and I can answer questions about that if anyone has a fiscal sponsorship at this time. Unallowable expenses, essentially subaward funds cannot be used for anything that's non-project related. So If you're looking for support of staff salaries for your administrator, your office manager, who's not directly tied to this project, we're going to question that. We don't really want to see that. We want to see everything that's tied directly to your project. So we do accept some level of indirect funding support, but no more than 10% of your overall award. We can't provide funding for non-public meetings. We cannot provide funding for construction or restoration of buildings, exhibits, or other similar like general operating expenses. We cannot support capital purchases, fixed or intangible assets. Museum or library acquisitions, so book collections, art collections, anything like that. You can't purchase that with our funds. There is a line between the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. So the Art Council in Montana provides funds for creation of art, and Humanities Montana does not. We cannot provide funds for performance, for performers, or for artist services. We can, however, potentially provide funds to support interpretation of art. So if you have a performance and then you have some scholars come in to talk about the performance, we might be able to help with that discussion piece, but not with the performance. It gets a little sticky right there. We can't help with lobbying or direct social action, and any projects that provide like a one-sided, uncritical treatment of an issue. Obviously, our funds can't be used to support projects that would raise funds, so we can't give you funds for a fundraiser. Say that. Meals and refreshments for audience, not included. Alcoholic beverages, not included. And any support for political campaigns or candidates for political office are unallowable. Successful budget. So successful budgets clearly depict the exact funds needed to support specific activities outlined in the narrative. They only include support for allowable expenses, and they accurately account for and include appropriate cost share. So remember that the line items and amounts you propose are the same, and that we'll ask you to, same as the ones we'll ask you to report on. So final reports will include, as you can see here, this side-by-side comparison of your projected expenses and your actual expenses. If you need to revise your budget after it's been submitted and approved and your award's already been sent out, you're going to need to get written approval from our staff prior to using those funds. It can't be applied retroactively. And our favorite topic, cost share. So many of you probably already have a good handle on this, but if you don't, we're just going to go quickly through it. So we require a 1-to-1 cost share match for our regular and our film and video grants. Opportunity grants, we do not require the 1-to-1 match. However, we strongly encourage you sharing your additional project expenses with us, because that helps us, right? The more cost share you report to us, the more cost share we can report to the National Endowment for the Humanities, and they see Montana as like, you know, offering sustainable programming. We're all kind of pitching in, and maybe they'll give us a bigger budget one year. All right, so let's talk about cost share. Give you a really quick, simple example. So the scenario is that you're facilitating a discussion panel at your local library, and your organization needs funding to help one of your panelists travel from somewhere else in Montana. So in this example, Humanities Montana awarded you $100. And this is to help specifically with your speaker's travel expenses to your local library. Your cost share that you're reporting for in kind is $50 because your speaker donated 1 hour of their time to present at your event that day, and they would typically charge $50 an hour. You then also reported $50 in cash as cost share, and this is because your organization paid $50 to advertise your event through paid social media ads. So your total project budget is $200. Pretty straightforward, but if you have questions about this, let me know. So the application steps. The first thing I encourage you all to do is to prepare. The more well-formed your well-formulated your plan is, the clarity of your project goals, these are the things that are really going to set your application apart from others. And when I say prepare, I mean read our grant guidelines on our website, which is humanitiesmontana.org. They give a lot more detail. They go into sort of the nitty-gritty things to do with everything I've talked about today. Make sure you're brainstorming your projects with others and determining specifically what you want to accomplish and how your project is rooted in the humanities. The next thing we want you to do is to contact us. So if you are interested in applying, call me. I will be the person on the other end, and I will be happy to talk to you about your project, and we can see if it's a good fit. Sometimes you'll pitch a project and then I will say, this part of your project fits, this part does not. And then we can kind of build on that and come up with the best possible scenario. You have to make sure you meet our deadlines. So as I mentioned, opportunity grants are accepted on a rolling basis. But we do want to see those requests come in at least 4 weeks prior to your project. For our regular grants and research fellowships, your deadline is December 20th. And that by December 20th, I mean end of business that day. If it does fall on a weekend, you have until Sunday night to get that into us. When I open my computer on Monday morning, your application needs to be there. You can log into our application, our online application portal, and you can start reading through the questions, start drafting your application there. And if you want me to do a pre-review, I'd ask that you connect with me and let me know you'd like me to review your application at least a week and a half prior to the deadline. And then once you're done, you finalize your application and you click submit. If for some reason your request is denied, we really encourage you to contact us and seek some feedback. With the annual budget size that we have and the number of requests that we get annually, funding can be really competitive. And we really want to help you succeed. So contact us if you're interested in feedback from our evaluation process, and work with us to see if there's an opportunity for you to apply again in the future. And I will just mention here that the average award amount for regular grants is about $5,000. So you will see on our website, if you go to grants awarded, you'll see that we do award some regular grants up to maybe $10,000. But on average, over the course of the year, the average amount is $5,000. So when you are making a request, put that range kind of in the back of your mind. Think about, like, what is a reasonable request, knowing what their budget is, what I need, and the likelihood that I will be selected as a sub-awardee. And okay, that is where I'm landing right now. What I do want is to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions. So I am going to unmute everybody and open your. So, Does anyone have any questions? I don't know if anybody can is unmuted here. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Anyone out there? Okay. Great. Did I answer everybody's questions?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm still, kind of taking this in and then forming some questions. I saw your contact, but are you available for us to kind of go over ideas with you briefly once we kind of go over this and flesh it out a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am here. I am on the other end of the phone. If you call me, we can talk through whatever idea it is that you're working on. We want to support public humanities programming. So if you've got something, give me a call and we can talk through it, and I can help point you in the right direction.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question. Anyone else? All right. Well, I'm gonna give you like 8 minutes back in your day. But your success is our success. Please ask questions. I'm here to help. My contact information is on the screen. Yeah, you can always just check out our website and see all of the things we have to offer. So I appreciate everyone attending. I hope to see your applications or to connect with you in the near future. Have a great Tuesday, and I will talk to you soon.